In January of 2018, the members of PTK decided to look into the issue of homelessness on campus. We started our research as a team, and through that research, developed a researched question. How do belief systems impact the homeless on campus? We developed a survey instrument and executed it in the spring of 2018. Our findings were published in the Tunxis Sun. We then formed a focus group of current students last month and invited them to share their homeless journeys with us. We found that not only do people in general have a very skewed view of what homelessness is and what it looks like, but so do the homeless themselves. Some important statistics from our survey. 26% of respondents of our survey said that they'd been homeless in some point of their lives. 57% know someone who has been homeless, and 8% are currently in danger of being homeless.
Chances are homelessness is something that we're already dealing with. But chances are we also didn't realize that we were dealing with it. The reason for this is that the homeless themselves often don't recognize that they're homeless. And in order for us to recognize them, they have to self-identify. We don't recognize we're homeless because we have shelter, and that's not what homelessness looks like. We don't recognize that we're homeless because the conditions that led up to our current state, well, they weren't economic. They were related to emotional issues, mental health, family dynamics, and that's not what we expect causes homelessness.
Once you become homeless, there's a whole subculture that you enter into, but that subculture is self-perpetuating, and it often perpetuates downward. One of the most common parts of this subculture is an exchange for shelter. That exchange is rarely monetary, otherwise it would be considered rent. It might be an awkward friendship, it might be sexual, it might be service, and that service unfortunately starts to look like indentured servitude. Awkward friendships start looking like you have to be someone's henchman. These aren't things an individual would necessarily opt to do on their own, but can't stop doing them because they would lose the exchange. So in order to try to cope with the resulting conflict, some turn to things like drug and alcohol abuse, self-harm, and other kinds of self-destructive behaviors. This lack of stability comes along with a tremendous sense of judgment, both judgment of self and judgment by others. And this is one of the outcomes that does not go away even after stability returns. Its effects continue for a long time in the form of depression, self-judgment, PTSD, and trauma, as we know, can start with seemingly small issues that strike later in major ways.
Even after homelessness has ended, we need to deal with a culture of trauma, denial, and shame, and even just not wanting pity. These affect the student's ability to self-identify as homeless. So we're left with, what can we do? What can't we do is change culture outside of Tunxis. What we can do is change the culture inside of Tunxis. How do we address the image of homelessness? How do we interface with our students about homelessness? We need to spread a culture that is supportive and not pitying or shameful. Our first suggestion is to include all of the resources available to students at Tunxis as information attached to individual syllabuses, and to be addressed as part of that syllabus in the initial lecture. This would include things like the pantry, the closet, but also counseling services. They also may not be homeless, but still need access to these services.
We believe that we can create a central and single point of access, and this is something that is very popular in social services right now, and it's something that a lot of universities are instituting. For that, we are suggesting consolidating a lot of our resources into the unused first floor of Bit Strip, then making counseling available there as well. This also allows us to provide a number of resources that can help students who are both homeless and just challenged with their living or transportation situations. These are things such as lockers, since homeless students tend to carry everything they own in their backpack and at all times, so that can get pretty heavy and tedious. students who have public transportation may find themselves doing something very similar. We may be able to provide laundry facilities someplace in Bidstrup, not only saving them money, but providing a level of hygiene. Access to the existing washrooms can make a big difference. By moving counseling and advising to Bidstrup, we are not segregating the population. Anyone and everyone at some point is going to go to counseling and advising to ask a question. We're now having people intermingle with other students. Other students don't need to know what specific resources for students are there, but it breaks down the stigma of that resource is for that kind of person because we're all going to the same point of access. As a fringe benefit, we can move the business office into where counseling was, and you can finally have your dream of having all offices in one building.
In conclusion, homelessness challenges a students' humanity and their ability to successfully complete their college degrees. We, as in Phi Theta Kappa, believe that it is within our capabilities and as well as our civic responsibility to support our homeless students in any way that we can.